Okay, thank you. And welcome everyone to the first meeting of the joint City of Tucson, Pima County MH Task Force. Um, Bienvenidos todos y todas y todes. Gracias por asistir aquí hoy en la primera junta del Comité de Casas Móviles de la ciudad y del condado. Thank you so much for being here. Gracias por estar aquí. Um, Vamos a tener interpretación en la junta. We're going to be having interpretation in the meeting. You should see a globe um, pop up at the bottom of the screen so you can select your language. I don't think it's been activated yet. Va a haber un globo donde puede seleccionar su idioma. Creo que no lo han activado todavía. Um, and just a reminder to speak slowly, especially when we're switching between languages. Y un recordatorio de por favor habla despacio, especialmente cuando estamos intercambiando entre idiomas. And if you all are able to activate the interpretation, we can let people choose their room.
Sure,
Thank
I can do
you.
that right now. Yeah, it should be available now.
Perfect. Thank you. Everyone should be able to select your language. So if you're not bilingual, to select either English or Spanish. Entonces, si puede seleccionar su idioma, sea inglés o español, y si no selecciona nada, va solo a escuchar lo que está diciendo cuando la persona habla sin traducción. And just do a quick test of that for people who speak Spanish, or thumbs up if you're hearing this in Spanish now. ¿Está funcionando?
I'm able to toggle between the two, and I do hear the translator
Perfect.
translating you in real
Great.
time, Ray.
Thank you so much. We will go ahead and get started then. Um, so grateful for this gathering. You know, there are many people in this room who've been working on issues related to mobile homes and manufactured housing collectively for decades. Have a lot of experience in this space, and grateful for the chance to hopefully move forward in overcoming some collective hurdles together. Uh, since this is the first meeting of this particular group, we're going to take some time to do introductions today, and really get to know each other a little bit more before diving into some of our first content area. So note there is, for accessibility, we do have the interpretation, and also the captions should be on. And I put in the chat a document for the notes in English, and I'll drop it in Spanish as well. There's the English one, and putting in the Spanish now. That thank you to Cassandra and to Maria for taking notes during this meeting. And just a couple of goals, just getting to know each other a little bit more, and knowing our work, deepening our collective understanding of what efforts already exist and where some of those gaps are, really trying to look at what are those hurdles that we've been coming into and how we might overcome those together. And at this meeting today, too, determining who's missing from this conversation, to make sure to invite to upcoming meetings. So with that, I'm going to put some intro questions in the chat. and could do a go around of our name, organization, and either what brings us to this group, what our concerns are, what our desired outcome is, and also what each person here can contribute, what work you're already doing, what expertise you bring to this. Uh, Amo Khan, Mark, if you're down to start, so you've been in a lot of these kinds of meetings and can pass to the next.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, Ray. So my name is Mark Keir. I'm a professor in the School of Geography, Development, and Environment at the University of Arizona. And since 2018, I've been working on manufactured housing, mobile manufactured housing here in Tucson, but there's sort of recognition that there's this, it's an incredibly important form of housing, but there's a wide gap between its potential as a source of high quality, affordable housing and the reality that for too many, it's this site of insecurity and vulnerability for a variety of reasons. And so I've kind of devoted myself to documenting the nature of that gap locally and nationally, and then thinking about how we might close that gap. One of the things that I focused on, because I'm an economic geographer, is on the availability of funds to make investments to repair manufactured housing. And so that's something I really think we need to be working towards. And that we can think about that as happening at a number of different scales. At the individual homeowner scale, there's a tremendous amount of exclusion from financial markets that happens in manufactured housing. But also encouraging owners of parks to make investments that have positive impacts on the residents, not just on the returns from the parks when they get flipped, but also starting to think about these as mobile home parks as community assets and things that governments should be investing in if they are serious about affordable housing and especially preserving the affordable housing that we have. I'm gonna stop there, but I'm so excited to see all of you convene together, see so many familiar faces and new faces as well. So thank you, Ray, for bringing this group together. Do you want me to popcorn to someone else? Carrie Nelson.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Carrie Nelson, and I'm one of the co-executive directors of Community Home Repair Projects of Arizona. I think my co-director, Angelica, is also on this call, so she might get to introduce herself later, or maybe she will be listening in. But Community Home Repair, or CHRPA, does free emergency home repairs for low-income homeowners, and that includes both site-built homes and mobile homes across Pima County. So we're excited to be a part of this as new directors to CHRPA, and also excited to continue the conversation about what can be done for mobile home park owners and mobile home park residents. Maybe I will just easily pass over to Angelica, who I just see popped on there. So.
I'm not able to hear Angelica. Is anyone else in the same?
Yeah, I see that Angelica has, oh, I think she might have just turned, oh, mic's on, but yeah, you might have to check your audio settings. The little microphone in the bottom left menu at the bottom.
If it makes you feel any better, I just threw my headphones across the room. They weren't working for me either.
Yeah, it looks like she put in the chat that she might have to skip, but Angelica, feel free to put write up something and put it in the chat too if that works in the meantime.
Maybe then let's go to Maggie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Amato Tejas, and I'm the director of the Pima County Community Land Trust. You know, I've known Ray for quite a few years, and she's been ringing the bell on manufactured housing and the issues that, are there. And I just want to, I want to see how the community land trust fits in, and how maybe, we've, thought about maybe purchasing, that's our lofty goal of maybe purchasing a manufacturer of a park of some sort. So I guess, and my contribution would be just our knowledge of how a community land trust model works. So thank you. So do I pick someone else? Oh, and I'm on the commission of equitable housing and development along with Ray and Alan. I'll pick you.
Thank you, Maggie. Yes, my name is Alan Solat, and I am on the community, the committee for, the commission is the word I'm looking for, Commission for Equitable Housing and Development. That's my, how I got to this meeting. My job is I'm a lawyer with Southern Arizona Legal Aid, and my primary practice area is housing. I have years of experience before I joined SAW in July of 22. Before that, I was doing consumer bankruptcy work, and I've done that for a really long time. So I have a lot of expertise in that also. Major concerns are the vulnerability of mobile home park tenants and owners, because the system doesn't permit, but landlords have significant. It's a big power imbalance. Landlords can abuse their power, and the tenants have little ability to combat that. I'd like to resolve that. The eviction issues are also really ugly, because if someone is evicted for a variety of reasons, non-payment of rent just being one, if they're owner of the mobile home that they're in the park, the law is set up to permit them to lose their ownership way too easily, and in a way that's financially devastating, because oftentimes it's the only thing they actually own. So I'd like to do something about that also. And I have to trick somebody else. So I'll go to Cassandra King with Eels.
Hi, I'm Cassandra King. I work with Pima County Emergency Eviction Legal Services. I work as a navigator and am a certified housing stability legal advocate. So most of my work is navigating low-income clients who are facing eviction to various resources that can hopefully help prevent eviction altogether, or if that doesn't work, help get them into long-term stable housing. And unfortunately, I think we all know that whenever we're dealing with clients who live in mobile homes and mobile home parks, those are some of the most frustrating cases, because the rules are not as consistent. It's harder to hold people accountable. And it just seems like oftentimes there's fewer resources available to those tenants who are in the highest need. And a lot of them have a lot of people who live in those spaces have additional things that make their housing difficult to keep stable, whether it's extremely low income, immigration status, disability, prior felonies, and all of these things stack on top to make it even harder to maintain stable housing long term. And I guess my main hope in participating in this group is to get all of the people who are working in this space and make sure that we're all aware of the same resources and compiling our resources and making sure that the people we're trying to help have every tool possible available to them. And I'll go ahead and ask Andrew.
Thanks. So I'm Andrew Paredes. I am the Community Development Administrator here at the City of Tucson. I am the city's point person on the Price Grant, $11.5 million grant that the city and regional partners were awarded in December. So one of my primary motivators for participating here is to meet all of you, work with you, get a better understanding of the landscape of mobile homes, mobile home parks, and the residents of those in the Tucson and Pima County area, just to better understand the issues and the players. My background, I was a banker for the first 25 years of my career in commercial banking, did commercial real estate lending, on a for-profit basis. So underwrote and lent a number of mobile home projects in the market rate space. So I do have an extensive background in financing all the different levers that are pulled and pushed with regard to financing owners, equity partners, what's possible, what's not possible. And then for the previous 5 years, I worked for the state of Colorado, investing public money in affordable housing projects, a number of which were both state, or not state, but city and nonprofit or land trust owned mobile home park permanent affordability initiatives. So also have some experience in how public money can be invested and pluses and minuses with regard to that and unintended consequences. So look forward to bringing my experience, primarily financial, to this group, as well as learning from all of you as we get all the Price Grant money implemented and out into the community. And I will call on my colleague Ernesto next.
Hi, Ernesto Portillo, Public Information Officer for Housing and Community Development. Gracias. And I'll call on Cheyenne.
Hi, folks. I'm Cheyenne McChesney. I am an environmental epidemiologist down at Pima County Health Department. And I'm here because I work on heat-related illness and mortality a lot. And we're definitely seeing a lot of disparity there within our mobile home population. So definitely looking for actionable interventions to help protect this population. And I will pass it to, oh gosh, hard to keep track. Who's gone, Maria?
Bueno, creo que soy yo, ¿verdad? Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es María Martínez. Soy promotora y Community Health Advisor y ahora soy parte del Concilio de Poder Casas Móviles. Estamos trabajando en prevenir el desalojo y para lograr esto damos una ayuda a cada familia que esté atrasado con utilidades y renta. También ofrecemos ayuda legal y talleres con los casos de derechos. Tocamos puertas llevando diferentes informaciones a nuestra comunidad vulnerable. Sabemos que todos tenemos derechos a vivir en una vivienda justa. Y nuestra comunidad de casas móviles tiene derechos. Y nosotros abogamos por esos derechos. Y estamos aquí para aprender y para poder llevar más información a nuestra comunidad. Muchas gracias. No sé quién no ha hablado. Imelda.
Good afternoon. My name is Imelda Esquer, and I work for Poder Casas Móviles. Also, I'm starting my own nonprofit. The name is Crecer. That means to grow. What is concerning me right now is the intersection between immigration, housing, domestic violence, gender, and all those intersections that impact the community. And what I'm hoping from this meeting is right now is the more allies, the more people that are working together to secure housing, regardless of your intersections. I think building community is powerful, and I'm meeting a lot of people right now, and that is amazing, and I'm glad to be here. And next people can be I don't know if Jim Murphy already can.
Hi, hi, I'm Jim Murphy. I've kind of a checkered background. Currently, I chair the Livable Community Age-Friendly Action Team of the Elder Alliance, which I imagine many of you are aware of, but it is an association of a lot of different agencies dealing with the older adult population. We helped encourage and work with the city to develop an age-friendly plan, a 5-year plan that is ending this year, and a major part of it had to do with housing. I was also engaged through the Elder Alliance in helping to form a major symposium a couple years ago that led to the development of the Age-Friendly Initiative for Older Adults, talking about, or not age-friendly, affordable housing initiative for older adults that talked about all the various issues. One of them obviously had to do with mobile and manufactured homes. After that, we had a specific seminar on that, talking about the issues of both those who own their own homes on leased land and those who are worse off, who don't own the land or the mobile home unit. So I've been engaged in advocacy in this area. Former retired CEO of Pima Council on Aging, and before that had a career as an elected official and a county administrator. And how about Elaine Jones?
Thank you. I'm Elaine Jones. I'm retired from university, and I teach at Pima College part-time. I also am a member of Colomie Synagogue and chair of the Social Justice Committee at Colomie, and a member of Pima County Interfaith. My interest in this is because of my overall broader interest in affordable housing. And I think this the problems with residents and landlords has slipped through the cracks a lot. And my main interest is in trying to get the legislation changed so that there are long-term changes, and to have somebody who is accountable for enforcing the regulations. Because even though we have regulations now, they're not enforced fairly. And so I'm looking at something that would give us a possibility of long-term solutions. My interest is, my mother lived in a mobile home, and she was very low income, and this was one of the only places she could afford. So that's where my heart sympathy comes from, wanting to have more fair regulations and laws for mobile home park and manufactured housing residents. Thank you. Who hasn't talked? I don't know. Who should it be, Ray? I don't know who hasn't spoken.
Alondra hasn't gone.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Alondra Surdia. I'm a first-year graduate student at the School of Architecture. I'm Mark's assistant, and we're doing the research on financing resilient housing. I'm here to listen and observe these conversations and get more familiar with the topic. I'm a few months into it, so I'm fairly new, but I look forward to hearing all the perspectives all of you bring. And oh, perfect. I will pass it off to Donna. Oh, it looked like she left the room. So maybe I'll pass it on to Cassie.
Hi, everyone. Cassie Lundeen with Pima County Community and Workforce Development. I'm a division manager here. I've worked with the county's housing regional task force, and I'm also the board coordinator for our current county commission on regional housing development. And I am going to call on Sophia Blue.
Thanks, Cassie. I'm Sophia Blue. I am the Division Manager of Affordable Housing over here at Community and Workforce Development. I am here to listen because there is no affordable housing without a manufactured home. And so I'd like to learn more about how we can help. And I will pass it to, let's see, Frank, did you go yet?
Nope, not yet. Hi, I'm Frank Bleckschmidt. I'm with the Arizona Attorney General's office, and I work as an attorney in our Consumer Protection Division. So our division, we're an enforcement agency. We investigate consumer fraud and deceptive and unfair business practices. But we're also, involved with looking at and crafting legislative proposals. So I can say that Attorney General Mays is very interested in issues affecting mobile home residents, and I think she's particularly sensitive to the rising costs that residents are seeing, and especially with utility costs, because that kind of fits with her background, formerly with the Corporation Commission. So we're here to listen, and if we can identify areas where we can get involved and investigate, or find where we can have an enforcement action, that would be great. Thanks, Ray. And I guess I'll pass it on to Herlinda. Or maybe Francine.
Hello. Hi, I'm Francine McEtrick, and I am with Pima Council on Aging, and I am the Provider Contracts Director, but I also oversee our home repair department. And I'm just on this call. I'd like to get some more information and just be part of this group and what we do. We do help out and assist older adults to age in place and age safely in their mobile homes, as well as regular housing as well. So thank you for inviting me, and I'm looking to see who else did not go. Maybe Frank, I believe, didn't go. Correct?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Erlinda. También soy de Poder Casas Móviles, y como ya dijeron mi compañera María, pues nosotros somos una organización donde damos les damos cuáles son sus derechos de los que viven en casas móviles, y también ahorita estamos pues ayudándoles un poco con unos recursos que estamos dando. Y también nosotros andamos tocando puertas. Yo soy promotora desde 2008. A mí lo que me gusta es tocar puertas, porque es donde nosotros vemos cuáles son sus verdaderas necesidades de la comunidad. Entonces eso es lo que estamos haciendo en Poder Casas Móviles, y pues me gusta mucho apoyarlos. Gracias.
Little babies.
Cassandra ya habló.
What do you guys think? Stupid.
Donna, you're off mute now if you'd like to share.
I'll share. I'm Kim Lucas. I volunteer for AMHO, and we work with mobile home owners who live on rented land, trying to ease the dispute between the two of them. My emphasis is on enforcement. I have a 53-page LTA that we've been printing up since 1974 and adding laws to it since. And I would like to see someone enforcing those laws.
I'm sorry, Kim, could you tell me what that acronym stood for?
LTA stands for Landlord Tenant Act.
No, I'm sorry, I meant the group you're with.
Oh, AMHO.
AMHO, thank you.
Yes. AMHO is Arizona's Association of Mobile Home Owners or Manufactured Home Owners. Thank you, Cassie.
I think Laura and Monique. Not sure. Laura, would you like to share? How about Monique?
Sure. My name is Monique Vasquez. I'm the senior organizer with Pima County Interfaith Council. Just here to build connections and learn more. And also we work with broad-based organizing with congregations and institutions. And so it's our interest in seeing if, many of our members of congregations or within the community are mobile home and manufactured home residents. So it's important to us.
RJ, are you able to introduce yourself? Let's see, RJ may still be a attendee.
For all the attendees, I gave you the ability to speak, so you just have to go to the bottom menu to the left side and hit the little microphone and you can unmute yourself. We should be able to hear you.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. You can tell that I'm a senior novice at this. Anyway, my name is RJ Levin, and I'm with AARP. And the reason I got involved in affordable housing, and especially the mobile home park, is because I realized that there's a lot of investment firms in Pima County and the city and the state of Arizona that are being bought, not only by investment firms within the United States, but also internationally. And so just a little broad information. 4 mobile home parks in Mesa, Arizona was purchased for $230 million. 1 mobile home park in Apache Junction was purchased for $88 million. And locally, just in the last year, there's a mobile home park here in Pima County that was purchased for $29 million. So my concern was that if they decided to sell to developers, then these mobile home park residents would have no place to go. And so what I'm asking is that, because they're not breaking the law, but that they give mobile home park residents first choice to purchase their own property as an HOA, or if they can't do that because it's so costly. I mean, who can afford 29 million even as a group, right? So then I'm asking that at least they're compensated for market value for their mobile home, because right now they're not. So that's why I'm kind of interested, and I'm really kind of pushing it not only on a local level, but on a state level too.
Thank you, RJ. Let's pass to Mónica.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Mónica Velasco y soy parte de Poder Casas Móviles. Pues a mí lo que me apasiona más es cómo llevar los recursos de la comunidad y poder apoyar a la comunidad que está ahí que viven en Poder Casas Móviles y que son afectadas por las leyes y por ciertas regularizaciones que no son beneficiadas. Y pues nada, estoy muy contenta por estar aquí y conocer al maravilloso trabajo que todos están haciendo. Gracias.
Sandra. Or Arispe, have you introduced yourself yet?
Sorry about that. My microphone thing wasn't coming up. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Arispa Ellenwood. I'm with the governor's office here in Southern Arizona. We're the only office outside of Phoenix that is representing the governor. So we are responsible for all 7 counties here in Southern Arizona. And our office is based here in Tucson, in downtown Tucson at the state office. And I'm here to listen and learn. My background is in public health. I have a master's in public health and family and child health, maternal and child health. I've worked a lot with nonprofit organizations, doing research, working with data, and being a health educator. I've worked a lot with youth and with the houseless population here in Tucson. So I don't know a lot about mobile homes and manufactured housing, but I would love to learn more. I am also can be a resource. Happy to share my information and anything that I can learn more about our policies. I can talk to our policy advisors and make connections for you all if there are certain people that you'd like to have conversations with. So I'm happy to be that conduit and thank you for inviting me to participate in the task force, Ray. We appreciate that.
Anyone else who hasn't shared yet, you'd like to come off mute and introduce yourself. I think that might be everyone for now. Feel free to introduce later in the chat if you weren't able to come off mute at this time. Yeah, appreciate the multi-sector coming together. Oftentimes we're in meetings and people say something like, well, we need to talk to the Attorney General, or we need to talk to this place. And to get people in the same room to be able to actually have that direct conversation is so powerful. I'm gonna share my screen for a second if this will allow me to do it. Oh yes, thank you. Just a couple of slides here. We did a short survey of folks here. It didn't include, we didn't get responses from everyone, but from those who did respond to get a sense of what are some of the issues of most urgency that people are concerned about. So some that were identified: preventing heat-related deaths was one of the most prioritized or most urgently felt. And with that, the tie-in to both utility charges and also the reliability of utility services. There's also really high concern about titling and ownership, including preventing people from losing title to their homes after eviction. Also overall eviction prevention, and also a strong interest in resident and nonprofit ownership of manufactured housing communities. And while a little bit less interest, also some interest in the benefits of manufactured housing, and that ties into with the above topic as well. And recognizing that all of these issues are intertwined. The unreliable utility services increases heat-related deaths. Evictions are intertwined with people losing title to their home. and resident-owned community and models outside private ownership, like community land trusts, really help address all of the other issues happening here. Because some of the overarching issue is the profit motive at the manufactured housing communities that prevent a barrier at every level, from not allowing people to put reflectix in their window to combat the high energy costs and the high amount of heat-related deaths, to not to having evictions that are not providing residents the security, stability, and resources to invest in their homes. And the real lack of tenant protections from overcharging, which are things we're hearing over and over in these introductions. Before we talk in some of the more details about issues with heat-related deaths and utility overcharging, wanted to share a little bit. This is a chart of from Rock USA about the difference in the cost from resident ownership versus private ownership. You'll see here, if we start off with the same amount in the first year, watching this white line and the blue, the lighter, is the costs in a privately owned community on average, versus this red line in the bottom of the costs in a resident-owned community. Just the rise of rent is not nearly the same kind of problem when communities own this themselves. I know a lot of people in the room already know about these things, but just to make sure we're fully on the same page of what these resident-owned communities are, these are communities where the residents buy the land together as a cooperative, often with the assistance of a technical service provider. And in that, there's no outside owner. And they generally are running these communities as a cooperative. So if one person moves, they can sell their share in the cooperative, but it's not that there's one owner, it's that everyone's owning it collectively, and then people still own their one home itself. I spoke with someone at Comanche Wells this morning, which is one of the very few resident-owned communities in the Tucson area, and asked her how much she pays a month. And she said that there's no rent, but that the fee, the monthly fee to the community to cover taxes, to cover maintenance, is $160 a month. And then when they add in, they do have sub-metered utilities for their gas and their electric, but they don't charge the maximum amount that they can charge. They charge what it actually costs. So she said she's usually paying $10 a month for water, and sometimes $40, sometimes $90 for electricity. Looking at an average for all of the costs, about $250 a month. I'll send links to these videos later too. We don't have to watch this staring at, but this is a little bit more about what resident-owned communities are, and a map of where these are in the United States. And this map doesn't include every resident-owned communities. These are ones that are converted through Rock USA, which is one of the major technical service providers. We see, because in Tucson, there actually are 3 communities that are resident-owned. There are hundreds in other parts of the country, and there are laws that actually support this, laws that give residents the right of first refusal if their park is going up for sale, that they have to tell the residents first, and that the residents get a chance to buy it. I know we're going to be talking about heat-related deaths and a lot of the details around utilities, but also want to take a minute to zoom out to some of the bigger picture solutions that are happening in other parts of the country. I have a few slides about heat-related deaths, but wanted to first check in with Cheyenne and Mark, who both are working on heat-related death issue and may have something to share there. Cheyenne, if you want to go first, you have some updates on the status of heat-related deaths in 2024.
Yeah, give me just a second here to share my screen, if I can. It looks like it's disabled for me. If I can't do that, I can just speak to it, but I just had a couple figures that I wanted to show if possible.
You should be able to share your screen now, Cheyenne.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. All right, so these are just some figures from our heat report from 2024. And so when we got to the part of our after heat response reporting and investigation, we broke things down into two groups of ages 65 plus and less than 65, just because we saw some big differences between those two populations. And one of those things that stuck out to us a lot was that for the 65 plus population, there's a higher, actually 75% of those that were 65 plus that had a heat related death died at their own residence. And so when we go further into our types of residences that were involved in our residential heat deaths, you can see that about 25%, or actually closer to 26%, were in mobile and manufactured homes, which is by far the highest percentage of type of housing for residential heat deaths, outside of people being at their house and actually physically outside. And then the last figure that I wanted to talk about was just when we dove into the AC status of folks that had an indoor heat death. The main things that we were noticing were that folks either did not have AC, it was not functioning, or it was not turned on. So we're really wanting to explore these things more specifically within our mobile home population this year and try to figure out where we can move this needle a bit. And then that's all I have for y'all today, as far as being able to share.
Thank you so much. And Mark, did you want to share something here too?
I don't have any slides to share, but I think it's important to note that as important as heat-related deaths are, they're sort of the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a lot of suffering and health problems that people experience well before they actually die of heat-related causes. And so much of that suffering is invisible. It happens behind closed doors. And so one of the things I think we need to think about is how to make these sort of hidden spaces of suffering inside the home more apparent and policy relevant. And one of the ways to do that is by emphasizing heat-related deaths, but also to recognize that this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just a manifestation of a much larger set of problems. So that's all I would add. But thank you to all of you who are working on this issue.
Is Carrie or Angelica, if you're so willing to share some, recognizing that the importance of AC and AC reliability in this. I know Chirpa is really one of the go-to places that people are turning to for if AC is not working. Could one of the Chirpa staff share some of what you currently have available, but also where that gap is of what the response time can be with your current resources? And then would ask the same too for Pima County and City of Tucson, who have the repair programs too. If y'all also are able to share after Chirpa about kind of what the current response time is of if someone is low income and they're trying to get support for the AC unit in their mobile home, how long they have to wait for that to happen, knowing that that's a major issue related to these heat related deaths.
Sure, I'll start and then Angelica, if you're able to, if you want to add something and come off mute, that's fine. And if you're not able to, you can add things in the chat. So Chirpa works with low-income homeowners. So and that includes folks in mobile home parks. So even if they don't own the land, as long as they own the unit that they are occupying, then we will work in that. I think an important distinction for us is air conditioning versus evaporative cooling. We almost exclusively work with evaporative coolers. We don't have much funding or capacity to work on air conditioners. We do install window AC units if that is the only option for cooling for folks. If there's not good space for an evaporative cooler, or an evaporative cooler doesn't exist and there's not the ability to add one, then sometimes what we can provide is a portable AC unit or a window AC unit to get one space in a home safe. Right now we are sort of at the very beginning of our cooler season. Chirpa will start up between 250 and 300 evaporative coolers this season. We have done about 100 of those so far. We started at the beginning of April. And after that, then we roll into repairing about 500, and we'll replace between 75 and 100 evaporative coolers this summer. Sometimes our response time is a day, and sometimes our response time is a little bit longer. We do our best to triage folks in vulnerable situations, whether that's medical vulnerabilities, children in the home, age, but that's all sort of reliant on personal narrative and advocacy from people themselves, their neighbors, the social worker that calls us, the friend, family member. But we are out every day. We have between, I'd say, like 3 and 6 crews out. And this time of year, we are almost exclusively working on cooling related issues and water related issues, because if your water line breaks or you don't have access to water and your main source of cooling is an evaporative cooler, you then also no longer have cooling at your home. So between the months of April and now October, November, we are almost predominantly focused on water leaks and cooling. So yeah, I think that's at least some of what you asked, Ray. And maybe Angelica, if you want to add something to that, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, wait, can you hear me? Yes, I can be heard. That's great. I think what I would add, because we do emergent work, as Carrie stated, we go to those who are most vulnerable at the time, but our turnover from when we receive the call to when we go there averages about 10 days. Can you remind me what the other questions were that maybe I could respond to them?
Maybe as a follow-up to those two, and if other people have questions too, but if someone has AC and their AC is out, since y'all mostly work on evap, what does happen in those situations?
I'll give it to Carrie to respond to that one.
Yeah, so we, if someone has like I would say the amount of mobile homes that we encounter that have like a full AC system as opposed to a house that might have a larger central air system is less, just due to electrical capacity or structural components of a home. We do refer people to the city's program, which we recognize has a longer waiting list than, I mean, there are a lot of people that need help with their ACs. We refer people to the county also has a replacement program. We did have a little bit of AC repair and replacement funding last year. We were able to do, I think, maybe 7 projects, but the repair replacement of an AC can run often between like $4,000 and $12,000, and we can replace a cooler usually for under $4,000. Maybe between $2,000 and $4,000. So just in terms of, that's sort of the way that we prioritize and why we prioritize that. But yeah, if folks need AC replacement, we our option is often only to refer them to the city or county major home repair programs.
Thank you so much. Would anyone from the city or county be willing to share and what your current resources are, but also where that gap is of knowing that this is urgent and without any criticism of not being able to fill that need, but really to understand what we would need to be able to fully meet that.
I am looking, so bear with me. I don't have the data at my fingertips, but if I can find something with regard to, to where we are in the city's home repair program, I'll share it in the chat, or I will report out at our next meeting. But in general, unfortunately, Carrie is correct. We are oversubscribed and underfunded. So we currently have a wait list for our home repair program that exceeds 300 or so. So that, unfortunately is probably a year plus out from being able to, to get a person who just joined the wait list, up to the front of the line. But I'll give you more details as I'm kind of double screening here and trying to get our data at the same time.
And Ray, I'll go ahead and jump in for the county weatherization program. I know for a fact that we're right now we don't necessarily have a waiting list. We're still taking customers or individuals who are in need. We do have that jurisdictional boundary, so whoever is in the city is served through the city. Anybody outside of the city limits are served by Pima County. I can tell you that last week we had a gentleman call because of a roof repair that was needed. And unfortunately, we won't be able to get to his ask until this time next year. So it's about a year out for larger projects. We do have some of our emergency services that, exactly like what Harry stated about the city program. Ours is very, very similar. It's just different buckets of funding as allocated between the consortium.
And this is probably a good time or, segue or plug for what's to come with the price grant. A significant portion of the price grant was earmarked for mobile home repairs. And both, through the city's program as well as through the county's program, mirroring those jurisdictions, though with some targeted neighborhoods. So more to come there. And, one of the reasons I was looking forward to these discussions so that we can, along with our partners at the county, identify exactly where the most acute pain points are as we develop, maybe checklist criteria or, types of repairs that, again, unfortunately, not enough funding, available for the entire scope of the problem. But, we have work to do in terms of figuring out how best and most effectively to craft those programs. So Mark raised his hand.
Sort of speaking to the same point, over the years, I've had the opportunity to speak to various people at the city and county, and one frustration that's often voiced, I won't, attach to any specific individuals about these emergency home repair programs, is that they're highly inefficient. Oftentimes working one household at a time under emergency conditions is not the way to stretch those weatherization dollars effectively. And if we could think about ways of scaling up some of these initiatives so that we can help more people with the same number of dollars, I think that would be a really great idea. And I'm hoping that there's capacity for that through programs like Price.
And to your point, Mark, I think it's important to note that the price grant is going to really help identify the strategies and means available, especially in the mobile home unit area, because we don't have that. Also, it's kind of a misconception, but there are tons of rules and regulations associated with any type of state weatherization monies, federal monies, pertaining to weatherizations. And the other caveat, just in my role here at Community and Workforce Development, I can tell you that there are not a lot of contractors that are eligible to receive these funds. So we've kind of have this two-prong approach. There's not enough money to get to everybody's need. There's not enough contractors to make the repairs necessary. And the current contractor supplier vendors are extremely overworked. They do get paid well, but they also, you know, have those kinds of things to mitigate. So it's challenging all the way across the board. So I'm really excited to see what the lesser restricted funds from HUD, especially under the price grant, are going to afford us and kind of identify as potential best practices moving forward so that we can collectively, you know, move that needle.
I'll speak a little bit about for Pima Council on Aging. We work closely with Chirpa. It's one of our main contractors that we use for cooler turn-ons. And we also work together with the same priority as well of age, who's in the home, and just other health related issues. But in our case, it seems like a couple things. Like, of course, everybody has the issue with funding, but the cost to start an evaporative cooler, which that's what we primarily do. We don't do anything with air conditioners because that's very expensive to repair. Is the cost of all the parts to fix, like motors and different pumps and stuff like that. And we've seen like that price has increased from what it was at least a little over $100 from a few years ago, what it would cost just to turn it on, and then just the cost to purchase a motor. So some of them that decreases the amount of clients we can serve. But it seems like we've done the last couple of years proactively had a list from the previous year of all the clients that called in to turn on evaporative coolers, and try to proactively call them before the intense weather hits the heat. But it seems like we're always behind, you know, once it gets started, people start calling in right away because it's like either too cold, and a lot of older adults that it's like too cold. They don't want the cooler turned on yet. They're still using their heater. And so we were trying to balance that, and as many people we call in a day, there's that many people calling in every day. So we're just chasing our tail around. It seems like for a few weeks to really try to call everybody and get them set up and set up with a contractor to request that turn on. So that's kind of some of the issues we deal with.
I think if I could just add one more thing, I think in relation to there is cost of parts for each of these units, and there's also the cost to run an AC versus an evaporative cooler there's a pretty big difference in that. And so we, I think about 80% of the folks we work with are making below 30% of the area median income, or below 50%. Sorry, pardon me. 80% of the folks we work with are at or below 50% AMI. And so the cost of running an AC unit is pretty out of reach for many of the folks that Chirpa works with. And so I think that's another factor in trying to make ACs accessible, but also making sure that if ACs are on, that there's programs like utility assistance to help run those ACs, which right now is potentially not going to be available to folks. So that's another consideration, that yes, AC is great, but it takes a lot of capacity and money to run those ACs as well.
On that point of money, I just want to say that there's a lot of spaces in our society where the poor pay more, but AC is one of those. Maybe the rate per kilowatt hour is the same, but if your home is poorly insulated, has holes in the windows and so on, then the cost of a degree for you is way higher than it is for your neighbors who might have newer and better insulated homes. So this is why we have to think not just in terms of cooling devices, but in terms of making investments in this critical source, this critical form of housing, not just rehabbing existing housing, which in many cases, dates back to, we have 35% of the manufactured mobile homes in Pima County are pre-1976, right? So we can keep rehabbing these pre-1976 units, or we can start getting really serious about making large-scale investments in new housing. And I think that we have to, if there's something I want this group to do, is to start thinking big. We need to think really big. This is 100,000 units of housing in our in Pima County. I can't remember the exact ratio, but that's many times more than the number of available subsidized units in our county. So if we're willing to spend $50 million on rehabbing Tucson House, maybe we need to be considering $500 million manufactured. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but I think we need to think really big. This is a type of housing that's really important. It's valuable, and no one has been investing in it for decades and decades and decades.
Quería preguntar a los miembros de Poder Casas Móviles también. Yo sé que están mirando muchas personas que tienen problemas con el calor en la casa y que necesitan reparaciones. Si quiere compartir un poco de lo que están mirando en sus experiencias.
Tengo dos preguntas. La primera, ¿quién son los que califican para esas reparaciones? Y la segunda, mi segunda pregunta es, mi esposo antes trabajaba en reparación de casas móviles. Y como ustedes estaban diciendo, en veces cuando las personas van a rentar una casa, los parqueaderos en veces cuando las componen, no les ponen la insulación. O sea, nomás componen lo que son las paredes, pero no les ponen insulación. Entonces no guardan el calor y no guardan el frío también. Entonces ese también yo pienso que es un problema de cómo saber si esa casa tiene insulación o no. Y otro, bueno, como dijo Ray, que nosotros como Poder Casas Móviles, que vamos y tocamos puertas, nosotros vemos las necesidades que hay. Hemos visto que sí, en realidad, por eso preguntaba quién eran los que calificaban, porque hay personas que desgraciadamente no tienen ni documentos. Entonces, esa es mi pregunta, si califican ellos en estos programas, porque creo que esas son las personas más necesitadas que yo he visto. Y como dicen, no pueden, en veces como dicen, tienen el cooler, lo tienen en muy mal estado. ¿Por qué? Porque no tienen la suficiente economía. Entonces, en esto, si lo tienen apagado, como dicen, o pagan la luz, o en veces para sostenerse, en veces son diferentes problemas de los que nosotros hemos visto. Bueno, al menos en mi caso, que yo he visto que el cooler está, y hemos visto que todo alrededor está muy lleno de, como de sal alrededor. Y para componerlo, yo una vez pregunté tiene para componer su cooler. Dice, pues por eso hemos batallado, porque no tenemos los suficientes recursos para nosotros componer nuestro cooler. Nomás mi esposo sube y le pone agua para que pueda enfriar, pero, o sea, ese es el problema que al menos yo he visto.
Yo tengo un comentario. Estaba, pues, por lo que he escuchado, las muertes por calores están obviamente conectadas con el acceso al enfriamiento, con el aire acondicionado. Entonces, muchas familias de bajos ingresos que no cuentan con una unidad de enfriamiento o no tienen el dinero para enfriar sus hogares. Estaba más o menos viendo ahorita, ¿existe algún tipo de póliza o ley que paren las desconexiones durante las olas de calor más fuerte en Arizona, en Tucson principalmente, que Arizona y Tucson es desierto, llegamos el calor hasta 110? Entonces mi pregunta es si hay alguna manera porque pudieran tener la unidad de aire acondicionado, pero eso es muy caro mantenerlo prendido. Entonces se les va a acumular, va a venir una cuenta muy grande y la mayoría de ellos son de bajos ingresos y pues no tienen el dinero para pagar esa cuenta y luego viene la desconexión. Mi pregunta es, no sé si ahorita no estoy tan educada en el tema, pero una solución que yo estoy viendo es como lo que llamamos, por ejemplo, para el Internet, net neutrality, que todo mundo tenga acceso a Internet. Porque es un bien de primera necesidad. Mi pregunta es si se puede haber como pólizas donde las familias tengan acceso a electricidad, especialmente durante las olas de calor tan grande que sufrimos en Arizona y las familias que viven en mobile home, donde primero, número uno, pues que no les desconecten la electricidad, porque si se las desconectan, pues vamos a ver más muertes, ¿verdad? En número dos, pues de nada serviría que no te las desconectaran, pero que si la cuenta se va a acumular. Vamos a decir que por el mes de junio, julio, agosto, no me la desconectaron, pero llegó septiembre y debo $1,200. Pues es lo mismo. Entonces, habría una manera de, igual como rent control, también electricity control, que las familias tengan acceso a electricidad independientemente de su ingreso, que no, por ejemplo, que no paguen más de esta cantidad. Algo así, no sé, estoy nada más como mi cerebro explorando un poco de ideas. A lo mejor existe, a lo mejor no. No estoy tan educada en el tema, pero es solamente lo que estoy pensando ahorita.
That's such a great question, Imelda, around policies related to this. I see Monica's hand. Adelante, Mónica. I can share one slide about this, and then I see your chat there, Monica. There and others in this room were also involved in this. This is a slide from Arizona State University, who's done a lot of work related to policy related to heat-related deaths. And they were part, along with AMHO, of advocating for a law change last year. They were trying to change to require that mobile home park owners could not prevent a resident from using alternative cooling methods like a window mounted AC, window coverings, sunshades, and that law got really diminished. They did succeed in now a park cannot prevent someone from putting in a window AC unit, but all the other parts of that were cut. So things like putting Reflectix in a window, which if you've put it in your car, might know that makes a big difference if you put Reflectix in or not. Like that silver shade that covers the windshield can make a big difference of the temperature, and there are some parks that do not allow people to do that. But this other part of the slide is what I wanted to note here. It's actually on the next page, related to your question, Imelda, is when we bring in the sub-metering utility issue, my understanding is that TEP will not cut off electricity in the summer. So if you don't pay your bill, and others jump in here if you have different understanding, but TEP won't cut off during certain months of the year. But when people are residents and their meters are sub-metered, so they're getting that, they're paying the park directly, the interruption of service can happen with way less accountability. So the statute says that under the current law that the mobile home park must let tenants know if there's going to be an interruption and reinstitute in a reasonable time frame, unless it's an emergency. That is not that solid of a protection. Many people in this room might be aware of there was a case in Tucson last year. One of the organizers from Poder Casas Móviles lives in a park where the electricity was cut off for 10 days. And during that time, the park did not provide alternative services. And one of the residents died in his home. There was a proposed legislation, and this hasn't passed, but this is what ASU was drafting with AMHO and with others last year. Actually, maybe this is in 2021, the years go by, of making the suggestion of legislation that a park must remedy any interruption of electrical service to tenants within 4 hours. And if it cannot be restored, that the landlord shall provide tenants with commercial generated electrical power until power is restarted. And there are some parks that do this. There are some parks that in fact take out insurance policies that if there's a major interruption, that the insurance will pay to have generators to power the park during that time. But that's not across the board, and it isn't something that's protected by law. So I know Monica has spoken about this publicly before, about times of having your electricity cut off. If you're interested in sharing about that, if your microphone does work again, and see Andrew has his hand raised. So we'll pass to Andrew first.
Thanks, Ray. And I'm curious, I'm newish to the state. You said that TEP for any homeowner or any occupant doesn't cut off electricity in the summer, regardless of status of the bill being paid. Is that what I heard? And if that's the case, oh, go ahead.
Can you say that again?
Did I hear you say that it's general practice for TEP not to cut off electrical service to anybody, if their bill isn't current in the summertime, for health and safety measures? Did I hear you say that?
That is my understanding. Is that other people's understanding as well?
If that's the case, I thought that through or forward. Is it then also the case that if a park owner is on a master meter, that park owner can't cut off the electrical service to a resident of the park if they don't pay their utility surcharge or whatever? The legislation that you put on the screen didn't seem to speak to that, and that might be a place of possible advocacy. I don't know if the Attorney General's office is still on the call, but for sub-metered subject residents, they ought to be afforded the same, life safety considerations as kind of a standard unit resident. Anyway, I noticed that it didn't seem to be addressing, that.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that, Andrew. That is something that we've actually looked at very recently. And those who spoke earlier about the TEP policy, that's right. That's based on a regulation by the Arizona Corporation Commission that requires that moratorium. And the way I understand it, they basically have two options. They can provide a date-based moratorium, which is from June 1st through October 15th, or more of a weather-based moratorium that's based on the fluctuation of temperatures. And the issue is that that's only applicable to the utility companies that are regulated by the ACC. We've kind of looked at, is there a way we can extend that to mobile home park owners? I don't want to say that there's a total barrier there, but one hurdle there is case law going back to, I think, the early 1980s that says mobile home park owners aren't subject to regulation by the ACC, even though they are providing utilities. Their primary business is to rent the lots, and the utilities they provide are kind of an incidental service. And so we can't rely on the regulations themselves, but I'll just say that we are looking at how we could attack that from other angles, and see if that's still an unfair practice of some sort, because and honestly, if you guys are aware of, or anyone on this call, if you're aware of disconnection of service during those hot months in the summer, that would be of particular interest to us.
I wonder what it would take to address that. You're saying, Frank, my understanding is that in 1970, when the Corporation Commission had the choice of whether or not they were going to regulate sub-metered utilities, they said no, they would not regulate that, and left this gaping hole of very unregulated, and that included unregulated gas piping safety and having gas pipes that were not checked for decades, but also included this gap of not being able to call the utility company and complain of a utility overcharge, not being able to call the Corporation Commission, and to, in fact, end up being evicted for unpaid contested utilities with very little recourse. As we're thinking of what are potential advocacy areas, that gap of accountability around sub-metered utilities still seems to be one of the really glaring ones. And would love to hear more from Frank or from anyone else on this call of what are some potentials for addressing that gap in accountability.
Yeah, I mean, looks like Mark has his hand up as well, so I'll just keep this short. But on a couple of those points, and I mean, I'm sure you're aware of this. It seems like with new parks, I think starting in the early 80s and then forward, the utility companies had to provide direct service to the customers. And so it's really just this subset of older parks where you have this huge gap in regulation. And there are some protections for safety, you know, involving the gas pipes underground. But that said, you know, there's a lot of aging infrastructure out there. And as I think you noted on the one case last summer, and we've seen one up in Apache Junction last summer, there's been electrical outages that are resolved quickly by the utility provider, but within or inside the park, there's been these delays of days and weeks where the residents don't have power. And so, you know, I can't get into specifics on active investigations, but we are looking at those issues very closely.
Can I just chirp in here? I agree that there needs to be a better legal framework for addressing these issues to properly incentivize park owners to invest in the capacity to deal with these outages, or at least take out insurance, as you described, Ray. But you know, as someone who spent a long time exploring parks in Tucson, a lot of these parks are incredibly marginal, and the owners themselves have very limited capacity to address these issues. And I think that creates a space for county, city, and state level government to think about what their responsibilities are to the public when a poorly run park does not have power for all of its residents, right? Like we need like a utility scale kind of chirpa. So I don't know. I think that's that's something to maybe think about in this group.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and oh, sorry. On that note, I just thinking out loud, you know, when you guys are talking about insurance options, I've been curious if there's any way that there could be a system set up of like a surety bond, where if every park across the state is posting a surety bond into a either a county level or state level fund, that when there is an outage at a park, that there could be almost like an insurance type product that comes in and you know, helps remedy the situation. I mean, that goes beyond the type of work I do. I'm just kind of, you know, thinking out loud and curious if there's a way that something like that could be crafted.
This, I think this is a part of a bigger conversation about how to insure for extreme heat. You know, we're all aware of the challenges of home insurance for wildfire, for flooding, for high winds, and the challenges faced there. But those insurance doesn't exist for extreme heat, right? And clearly that's a gap. That's causing suffering and loss of life. So I think that and who the insured would be, I'm not sure, but I think something it's called parametric insurance, like where basically when the temperature goes above a certain amount, maybe the city could be insured, so that when the temperature goes above a certain amount or a certain number of days, then the insurance policy would pay out, which would give them the capacity to go to places where there are these systematic failures and intervene. Anyways, lots of getting complicated in these discussions, but I do think these are it's so many great policy ideas have come up here. I hope we're making a list.
I think, Elise, you should be able to unmute now. If you want to try.
Hi, I'm Elise. I'm Mark's PhD student. I showed up a little late, so I apologize. But I just wanted to note, Frank, I don't know if this is a helpful area for advocacy, but we had a couple people who participated in Mark and I's research who had like erroneous utility fees due to their park owners, and they couldn't pay their rent without paying that utility fee, which they were unable financially to do, and thus had to contest the utility payment in small claims court. That payment was thrown out, but then they were charged late fees that equaled or surpassed the original utility fee because they hadn't been able to pay their rent for multiple months because their landlord collected rent on an app that wouldn't allow them to pay their rent without also paying their utilities. So just a way in which like that type of utility charge can really be more disruptive to somebody's finances than it needs to be when it is not legitimate.
Yeah, and Elise, maybe this is better for offline, but if you could pass along the businesses that were involved with that, we're trying to be aware of any junk fees that are getting added on to customer bills, and if there are predatory practices that you think are happening here in Tucson or anywhere, it's something we could look into.
Yeah, I can talk to Mark and then we can circle back. I think we got to, because it's research, some of it we have to be careful about like giving the wrong information, but I'll touch base with you, Frank. I appreciate it.
But I'll also say that part of the reason we were doing interviews in this park that will remain nameless is because we were told by folks at AMHO that there were issues at this park. And I've heard similar stories to the one that Elise just shared from Ray and others. My sense is that even though it seems like this would be very aberrant, it's actually pretty normal, sadly.
I know we have a lot of people on this call, so I wanted to take a chance to see if anyone else had thoughts, questions, reflections, including to the question of what are some potential advocacy points to be helping to address, whether it's specifically the utility issues and heat-related death, or again, since this is the first meeting and we're determining the agenda for future meetings, if there's another advocacy point that you really want to make sure that's brought into the future meetings of this group. I dropped a few in the chat that I've heard so far. The potential advocacy for mobile home residents to have the same life-saving protection around utility outages, to have the Corporation Commission potentially regulate more around the master meter utilities, and then also the issue we were talking about earlier in the call about the real gap of assistance in the time of it having to take sometimes a year to get AC repair, of how to close that gap. Are there other things that people think would really help to address this issue of heat-related death, utility overcharge, and the general vulnerability of MH residents?
Hi, Ray, it's Maggie. Can you hear me? Yeah? No?
Yes.
Okay. So I had the opportunity of seeing a home out in 3 Points. It was an older mobile home, and the county came in years ago. Instead of like fixing the roof or whatever, they put a big they made a big stage, a shade structure over that. I'm wondering, I don't know how cost effective that is, but I'm wondering if something like that could perhaps help. Especially because, like, has been mentioned, there's a lack of everything, from insulation to leaky windows and what have you. So I wonder if that would help. Just a suggestion.
I have a question, right? So the potential suggestion for advocacy that you share, that it can include the families who are undocumented?
Yeah, do you have a specific area there? You think like for the weatherization or for something else too? So you'd put it in there, ensuring that weatherization programs support families regardless of status.
Mm-hmm.
For the programs that currently exist, is that true that there are programs that are available regardless of status for weatherization and AC and swamp cooler repair?
I can speak for Chirpa. We have several programs throughout the city and the county, and some of them require more documentation and some of them require less. But the best way is to reach out to our office, give us a call, leave a message, 520-745-2055. Our intake works in Spanish and English and can work to find the right fit program for the needs that people have. I'll put that number in the chat.
I see Mark's hand raised, but I wonder if anyone else who hasn't had a chance to speak has any thoughts too, then would love to hear your idea. It could be both ideas for potential advocacy and also sharing work that's already being done. I know there are more folks on public health from here, others who are working on heat-related issues.
So I read in the comments that DEP, they don't charge, they don't disconnect electricity during the hottest month from June to October, I think. But also I asked what happened with the accumulated BEP, and they say it became the responsibility after October 15. So then they fix the issue temporary, but then you have the issue again in November and December during the coldest month too. And it's like it's not resolving maybe to the level that we want to be resolved. And so maybe putting something like if they don't disconnect, how can they have like a flat amount of paying the bill? Because I heard families that they say, I have $900 that I have to pay for electricity. And that is a lot of money. It's a huge amount of money. And then after October 15, they are responsible for paying that amount of money. And my thoughts are maybe they can pay only $100 per month. I don't know. Maybe it's too much to us, but I don't see the way that they can pay $900. If they don't pay it because they don't have money. That's simple.
If we can pause for a second, it seems like the interpretation is not happening anymore.
Creo que se fue. ¿Oye? No lo escucho.
Yeah. I see, Mark, you have to leave in 5 minutes if you want to share your.
No, I just actually, this sort of builds on what Imelda was just speaking of. You know, I think the issue of utility debt and just debt in this space is really important to reflect on as both a problem, but also as a potential solution to some of these issues. Like, given that emergency home repair can't often be delivered quickly enough and the capacity of existing, nonprofit providers is limited, or city county providers. I think maybe they could think about how to expand their capacity to help people through low or no interest loans, to make repairs to AC units, to replace AC units, etc. Because I know that when I had to replace my, $14,000 AC unit, I wasn't doing that out of my bank account. Like I did, I had to use a credit card, and it wouldn't have been possible otherwise. But I know a lot of people don't have access to that kind of credit. And I think that some sort of gap financing, there's a role to be played, I think, there for nonprofits, and county and city governments.
Any other thoughts before we start talking about next steps and things to prioritize between now and the next meeting?
Sí, yo no sé si me escuche. Eh, mi comentario es de que lo que es de lo de la electricidad y todo eso, ¿no? De hacer cambios y ponerles aires acondicionados. Entonces, a veces las trailers no están aptas para ese power o esa cantidad de luz del aire acondicionado. Entonces, todo el sistema eléctrico, o se tiene que hacer una caja nueva para poder conectar una AC. Entonces, yo se lo digo por experiencia porque yo vivo en una casa móvil. Yo hace como 3 años quise poner un aire, entonces mi casa no está apta para un aire acondicionado de un AC, si estamos hablando de un sistema grande, ¿no? Entonces, como decía el comentario anterior del señor, que él tuvo que sacar de su tarjeta de crédito. Entonces, uno que no puede tener ese crédito, a mí sí se me hizo muy pesado, y tener que cambiar la caja, cables y todo eso era mucho más para mi bolsillo. En otra, el comentario anterior, que era de los medidores individuales. No tenemos medidores individuales. Entonces, todos estamos conectados a un solo medidor, que es del parqueadero. Entonces, cuando todos nos conectamos y llegamos del trabajo, se bota el medidor, pero el general, el grande de todo el parqueadero. Entonces, es muy constante eso. Entonces, como decían, ¿cómo podemos ayudar en esos problemas? Y yo creo que eso sería de los siguientes pasos, como ya hablando con electricistas, o hablando con esos problemas más serios, porque hasta las trailers se pueden quemar. Entonces estamos hablando de que puede haber un corto, puede haber incendios en esas casas. Entonces queremos hacer algo que, si lo vamos a hacer, que se haga bien, y que sea beneficio para las personas que están en su casa, ¿no? Y de otra, hay que les exigen una aseguranza para su casa. Entonces, todo eso se tiene que mirar. Entonces va a subir el cobro de la aseguranza. Si viene un problema eléctrico, no lo va a cubrir la aseguranza, porque se hizo un cambio y no se hizo un cambio como debería ser, ¿no? Porque puede ser que la aseguranza no pueda pagar eso. Tenemos que mirar todos sus problemas y todos sus detalles. Entonces,
Tocando el tema de las aseguranzas. ¿Se escucha? Ok, tocando el tema de las aseguranzas, hemos tenido algunas llamadas en Poder Casas Móviles de que también el precio de la aseguranza es algo que no pueden costear, y muchas familias se sienten estresadas porque es algo que se les exige tener la aseguranza.
Can people hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, I didn't know that. I can't get anything else. And this is Steve Toffel. And I have a few comments. As everybody probably already knows, the Mobile Home Landlord Tenant Act has a very specific clause about what mobile homeowners are allowed to charge for the utilities. And it's pretty close to what the utility is allowed to charge. In addition, there is no real venue within the state to enforce that law. People complain to the Department of Housing, which is where they're directed to go. The Department of Housing then refers it to other entities, but they do not have the ability to do anything about it themselves. And none of the legal entities in the Pima County or the city seem to be interested in enforcing that. Plus, the attorneys who are hearing the evictions don't care about that. All they look at is the whether or not the rents are paid. And as we already said, the rents are included, the utilities are included with the rent. And when the utilities are exorbitant, there's no way that these tenants can pay. So I think the enforcement of the regulations is a big asset, a big factor. And the other question I had is when the contractors are doing the mitigation of the energy, are they required to be certified by HUD? I heard that there are a lot of them didn't qualify. And the next question was, if they are certified, are they subject to Davis-Bacon wages, which adds a huge amount to the cost? Thank you.
I would defer to folks from CHRPA or the county and the city weatherization program on those questions. Correct me if I'm wrong, those of you who know better than me, but I'm just gonna fill the silence here. My understanding is that depends on where the funding is coming from. So I've heard, for instance, that Department of Energy weatherization funds have a much higher standard, and the contractor has to have certain levels of certification. And in some instances, this can be a major barrier. I can't remember the name of the certification, but I was told a few years ago by someone at the county that there was like literally one contractor in all of Tucson that had this level of certification. So it became very difficult. This sort of quote unquote red tape made it very difficult to actually get the weatherization dollars out the door to the people that needed it.
Which would explain why it's so expensive.
Yeah, and I'll also say that I've heard from the state level weatherization program that, you know, as we're talking about how the amount of money that's available for weatherization is a small fraction of the actual need, but that they're not actually able to spend their whole allocation, right? Because of these contractor issues. So there are a lot of it's a real issue when my understanding is that the budgeted amount for weatherization isn't being spent every year when we have problems as large and profound as the ones we have.
Agreed.
Can I ask you a question, Steve? I can, because you TOEFL Dent, as if I'm remembering correctly, you do a lot of low-income housing tax credit development, and like one of like the largest affordable housing developers in the state, right?
Well, I don't mean to brag, but yes.
So how come you guys don't do work in manufactured housing?
We did one project up in Taos, and it was a disaster for us. We're not set up to do that kind of work, and we do ground up apartment development. Mobile home parks would be mostly site work. And there are civil contractors who can do that. We would just hire them. Does that answer? Does that
It does. It does. I just wonder if there would be some sort of, what sort of incentive system might encourage greater investment from the development community in actually building higher quality. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why investors do buy mobile home parks, but not necessarily investing in them and in the quality of the housing that's in them. I'm just wondering if you can, as someone who's been in the field for a long time, you can think of what kind of incentives, tax incentives or otherwise, would sweeten the deal for developers.
Well, unfortunately, one of the big incentives for a lot of out-of-state and out-of-country investors is because they can take advantage of the loopholes that we currently have. That right now, they know that nobody will enforce the utility rates, and so they are overcharging utilities by 4 times in some cases. Instead of $120 or $130, they're charging $900. That's not across the board, but when you combine that with including that in your rent, they have a great incentive to have people default and be evicted. Now, why would somebody as an investor want to have a vacancy? And the answer to that is very simple. Most of the people who have to leave own their own mobile homes, and those mobile homes cost anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 to move. And by the time they get permits to do that, they are it takes another 2 to 4 months to move them. Well, with the current laws, they can be evicted in 30 days. So the incentive for the mobile home owner is they can take over those mobile homes, and they can either resell them. And I'll give you an example. In California, if they resell them, they are only allowed to keep their own costs, and the rest has to go back to the former owner. That is not the case in Arizona, and it should be something that we change the rules on. But in addition to that, then they either resell them, or they can re-rent the space at a higher rate. And the result is that they are increasing their income. Now, a lot of these people are overpaying for their properties. I mean, we have examples of prices have doubled or quadrupled over the last 5 years. And so they end up owning this on a basis that they can't justify. The only way they can justify it is to increase their income. And so they're going to all kinds of strategies to do that, raising rents, raising utilities, getting people thrown out so they can own the mobile home, which is a nice asset. I mean, it just goes on and on. So the incentive would be the only incentive I've been thinking about is incentives for the tenants. If the Attorney General starts cracking down on some of these strategies, if we pass new statutes to force for the equity to be reimbursed to the former tenant, those are all benefits to the tenant, and it would not necessarily be a benefit to new owners. But those new owners they don't care about the tenants. They just care about their return on investment. And as a developer and a builder, I have no patience with people who cheat. And if they are cheating, then they should get whatever they deserve. And if they have high integrity, like a lot of the local owners do, they take care of their tenants and they charge reasonable rates. No problem at all. If we could assure that those are the kind of owners that we'd be getting, then I'd be a happy camper. So I don't know. That's a long answer for probably a short question. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. It was very interesting.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was able to talk since the beginning of the meeting. So I'm so excited.
I'm thinking about what might be some points of research between now and the next meeting. I wanted to check in of people's feelings of priority around this. I think for me, since I get calls regularly from people who need AC repair, and seeing the chart of how many people who are experiencing heat-related illness and death have AC issue, I do feel pretty invested in trying to get some of the resources to help fill the gap. I'm wondering if those who work in home repair might be interested in meeting between now and the next meeting to look at what that gap is of what it would cost if we were to be able to offer more people who are eligible for the services a faster response on AC repair. I know there's some hesitation around AC too, and that there are resources for SWAMP, but not for AC. I'm wondering if that is one point that people are interested. See Kim and then Mark.
Just unmute yourselves.
Oh, those were people who were raising their hands that you're interested. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm interested.
I'd also just say that in addition to like pursuing more AC repair, I need to do a little bit of research and track down the organization that was actually doing this. I think it might have been Red Cross or it might have been a fire department, but actually delivering portable AC units to homes. Right? I mean, these are just plug-in units, and I've been bailed out by one of these.
Me too.
And I don't know if we could even like mobilize like I don't know where they would be stocked or restored, or who would have the capacity to deliver them. But maybe we could even find ways to get some of these donated, or I don't know. But I think that seems like a really not a long-term solution. But if we're talking about, you know, giving someone a week to find a repair person, that could be a really valuable stopgap measure.
Excellent.
And there was also a question, Ray, I think you had in the chat, and I had to step out for just a second, but I'm still here. So I stepped out, and now I can actually be here to the end of the meeting. People who should be in the room. There is a lot of, I don't know how we best go about incorporating this, because there is a tremendous amount of antagonism, I think, between tenants and landlords. But landlords and managers know a heck of a lot about how this business works. And if you don't have support from, given our state, if there isn't support from landlords and managers, there's less chance of it being successful at the legislative level, or there's less chance of it being enforced. Right. So I don't know how we think creatively about where there's an intersection between where there's some unanimity on these issues, right? Where we could benefit tenants and landlords at the same time. I don't know if that's something to consider, but it's just it's an obvious absence in the room for very good reasons, I can imagine, but something to think about.
I know it's the last couple of minutes here. I know Chirpa does have some portable AC units, and the health department does have some cooling centers. I'm wondering if anyone from either of those groups wants to just share what they're currently doing related to that, and then maybe also if there's any addition that you'd like to do if you had more funding.
Currently, we are providing. Oh, Carrie, you know what? You go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We do have some portable units. I think when we get more into our season of doing replacements, we will often put in a portable unit in in our time between replacements. Right now, when we're doing a lot of startups, the time that it takes to install a portable is about the time that it takes to do a startup. So when 2/3 of our folks don't have cooling, we're sort of just focused on as many startups as we can. Sometimes portables are a longer term solution and sometimes they're a short term solution. But that is something we utilize, especially when the temperatures are above 100, above 105, trying to get folks safety in at least part of their home. But it's not necessarily a wide range program that we have, but we are able to offer that pretty frequently.
And PCOA does submit those work orders to Chirpa to do those cooling options. We call it a cooling options when we know the client in the past has evaporative cooler that can't be repaired or can't afford, or has an AC unit that can't be fixed, or we can't obviously replace that. So we do appreciate that as an option.
And it's 3 o'clock, so we've already been here a couple hours. I want to see if there's any last thoughts before we close for today and meet again next month, potentially with some meetings in between them to try to move things forward.
Yeah, I have one comment raised, Steve Toffel. Is there a way to do this meeting in person? I hate Zoom.
I think we had talked about at least doing some of them in person and some on Zoom, like at least every few or a couple times during the year, getting in person. So I think the next few we may do on Zoom. But is everyone here within the city? Wondering if there are some people who are coming from further that Zoom might be or in person might be a barrier.
Hey Ray, just to chime in too, we do have the opportunity to hold hybrid meetings if that does work for folks who want to attend in person and then other folks who want to join online.
Sounds great. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to be here today and all of your work outside of this. Remembering that when we're talking about ideas, we're talking about real people's lives, right? As Cheyenne shared in the beginning, especially that we're talking about people dying in their homes who don't have an AC. And so grateful for this community coming together to really be trying to throw down to address that. Like, yes, let's get a bunch of portable units and let's get them in. Let's be able to have our collective response be faster and have a lot of confidence that we can at least make some of those short incremental things in this immediate while working for longer term. Thank you everyone for being here today. We will get the notes out and probably meet in between now and the next one. If people want to be a part of subcommittee meetings, we'll send out an email with invites to meeting dates for the in-between for smaller conversations as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Gracias.